What's up, my archfiends of chaos? This is your Kid Rose Chaos Gaming gamer. Let's get on this Final Fantasy video. Now, since the Final Fantasy Pixel Collection came out with Final Fantasy 1, I wanted to go back to the original Final Fantasy to talk about an inconsistency with the timeline in the Final Fantasy 1 universe, because the Strangers of Paradise has made a huge change, a jump into things. So we're gonna go with the whole there's three Garlands. We already know one is Neon. We already know one is Jack, because, well, obviously, even the promotional material says that this guy's gonna become Garland, which I still think there's a third Garland. Now we're gonna get to the mystery of who the first one is. But here's the thing: there was actually a first Garland, but he wasn't called Garland, because there was no Garland technically until the third one, because the third Garland was Jack, with his last name Garland, according to the Strangers of Paradise universe, of course. Now, you could take it as an isekai or whatever, or you could take it as a direct prequel to Final Fantasy 1, but in this case, we're going to have to take it as a direct prequel to Final Fantasy 1, because, again, there's just, and it makes sense, timelines change. Even Garland in the Disscusion game says that, you know, Chaos was once him in a distant past that fused with the four Archfiends, and a reference of Disscusion, whether it's Disscusion or Disscusion Duodecim. And then Chaos now is like, oh, yep, I remember, because Garland and Chaos are one of the same. And this is how I say it is. There was no Garland, so the Black Knight figure that you see right before you is Chaos, because they have not seen the full demon form until you defeat Chaos, the demon form, and Strangers of Paradise, which is the, you know, I think it's pretty much, you know, the final boss of the game, and you get his powers after you defeat him, which is, it's kind of like a whole thing with Sin, where, you know, last Aeon, the last person that they sacrifice to become an Aeon that kills Sin becomes Sin, such as with, you know, Jack in Final Fantasy X. And the reason why I bring up Final Fantasy X for this, in the Strangers of Paradise verse of in the Strangers of Paradise version, it's the same thing. The person who kills Chaos becomes Chaos. You know, first to get him strong enough, the Chaos host has to kill his friends, which that's what happens in the game. He has to end up killing his friends to cause them to have the pain and agony to unlock the darkness within. Pretty much like in the Star Wars lore of becoming a Sith. You have to sacrifice what you love in order to gain more power. Well, it's the same thing. In order to become a Chaos host, you have to have nothing but darkness in your heart. So, having to sacrifice people you care about. And even though that Jack Garland only technically met the people during the, you know, the first day of going to Cornelia, he got close to him like if they were brothers all along. So when he had to kill him, it put enough anguish, and then, you know, he was able to transfigure into Chaos. But that's not the point. We're not trying to get into that. We're not trying to get into how Jack became Chaos, because we know. In fact, he defeated Neon, which I assume Neon has defeated Chaos before, in a timeline before Jack's, when she was a warrior of light. Now, I got so many theories about this. There could be another theory. It could be possible, and I'm not saying with 100% sure, it could be the very first warrior light we see. And that Strangers of Paradise is actually after Final Fantasy 1. But, you know, and Warrior Light has actually destroyed Chaos. in the original Final Fantasy. So what if, I know I'm going off the rails, but what if the first warrior light you see, the one you see in Dissidia, is the first Chaos? Is the first one to don the black armor? Is the one to become Chaos? But Jack wasn't around at this time. Neon was a new warrior light that came from Lufinia, because if you notice in the Strangers of Paradise, they're wearing modern day clothing, and even Jack's listened to MP3 player with new metal on it, because Lufinians had advanced technology. And that's if you take the isekai-esque story out of this. They're Lufinians. The race, not the Lufinian that we see. Lufinian race was the advanced race. They were so advanced that they even got Cornelia to worship them as gods. And like in all religion, there's got to be an all dark evil figure they have to kill and destroy. That they blame all the problems, even man's problems and earth problems and the nature and climate change. They had to blame it on something. So, and Final Fantasy is not too, I'll be honest, Final Fantasy it has no chill when it comes to really talking down to religion. Because if you think about Final Fantasy X, this is where Final Fantasy X got their stuff. Because if you knew the Yevonites were eventually a cult, because really, Sin never had to come back. It was actually a lie told by Yevonites that they had to sacrifice, one of the guardians to become the next Sin. We really never had to do that. You could break the chains. But, people were so indoctrinated into that belief that they didn't understand. It was the same thing with Corneliites. Corneliites were indoctrinated by the Lufinians in the Strangers of Paradise timeline. And this is where I will say it is the first warrior light that becomes Chaos before Neon defeats him. Lufinians, to keep the world having a perfect order like they want to keep order going on. Keep people believing in one ideology. That they lied and said that Chaos was going to always come back. But it's not a lie when it does happen. So the Lufinians brought back the warrior light, but as the black armor thing that you call Garland. And that black armor is not Garland. That's to become Chaos. When you fight the black armor figure, because I'm going to call it the black armor figure for right now. When you fight the black armor figure, he or she, whoever's in the armor, says they're to become Chaos. So Warrior Light is Chaos. Warrior Light is the first Chaos. Because after defeating the 4 fiends and then destroying Chaos, part of Chaos survived to possess the body of Warrior Light. So Warrior Light had probably had immortality, but succumbed to the darkness of Chaos, because it's like the Final Fantasy X theory. Whoever destroys Chaos becomes Chaos, at least in the Final Fantasy 1 connotation. But there's examples of that even in the other Final Fantasies. Final Fantasy 7 I can explain. Both Vincent and even Nero, which Nero only has a little sample of Chaos inside of him, and that's why Nero Disable's nuts and crazy, besides, how they were raised, but then Vincent was able to control Chaos. But it's like this, each Chaos is different. That's why I said I'm not going to call, that's what I said, I'm not going to call, Garland, because Warrior Light became the first Chaos. And it's a very parable, because when Jack becomes the Warrior Light, time resets itself. And maybe not, it didn't reset itself. Maybe the new Warrior Light that fights the Jack Garland when he's in the full Garland suit and the DLC, this probably is a new Warrior Light that wears the same armor as the old Warrior Light, to keep the tradition, because the Lufinians want to keep the order going on. So they want to blame the whole world's problems on chaos. Chaos is the ultimate evil in the world. Chaos has to be destroyed. Chaos has to be stopped. Chaos is responsible for climate change, wars, just all the world's ills. Chaos is at fault for it. Chaos is the scapegoat. And like I said, Final Fantasy's not done. Final Fantasy has done this with religion before, with 10 being a huge thing of that, and even 15 to some degree, where Noctis could only kill the ultimate evil, which became Arnon by sacrificing himself, and there was no other way. Which, if you read the book of Final Fantasy 15, Bahamut came up with that religion to keep the world in order. Final Fantasy tackles really strong subjects in a way that is very clever. So yeah, there is 3 chaoses, and the one that got the title Garland was Jack at Strangers of Paradise. And it may not even be the fact this is after Final Fantasy 1. For the fact that Astus is still alive, it does bring a different kind of parable. But Astus has always worked with Garland in any kind of continuity. This could also be the fact that Neon could have actually been the first Chaos, and then Jack defeats her, later on becomes Chaos, and then the beginning of Final Fantasy 1, where the Warriors of Light show up to face what we know without shadow of a doubt now is Garland. So maybe this doesn't have to be after Final Fantasy 1. That this could be before. And it could make sense. I think the Lufinians did set up stuff. I think because Cornelia known chaos is the evil of the world, they have to go purify the crystals. If they don't purify the crystals, the world's in danger of being destroyed by natural disasters and all forms of negativity. And if anyone knows about the crystal spiritual religion with dealing with crystals and stuff like that, crystals have to be purified, or otherwise, you're gonna have curses. You have to purify crystals in order to take out the evil dark energy. The Archfiends have cursed the crystals, and these crystals affect the entire world. These are big crystals, bigger than us. So these crystals affect their exact nation. So, another theory I want to point out, and I've talked about it, that what if the first Chaos was a different warrior light, or a king of Cornelia, or just a regular knight that became Chaos for going to the Chaos Shrine, and then Neon as a warrior light took that person down, defeat the Archfiends like it was in each and every time, became Chaos, and then Strangers of Paradise begins. And then you fight Chaos, destroy Chaos, and they said that sense. Now you get Neon as a party member, and then you go fight the future Archfiends, or that were actually your best friends in the present timeline, but they came from the future to the past. So in Strangers of Paradise, you fight those Archfiends. Those are the same Archfiends in Final Fantasy 1. Now you become Chaos because you turn against the Lufinians, so they force you into the Chaos armor and force you into the role because you can't be controlled by Lufinians anymore. So the Lufinians like, okay, well now you're Chaos. After Jack defeats the real Chaos. And then Jack Garland revives the Archfiends of Chaos, begins Final Fantasy 1, where we see the iconic warrior light. So let me know what you think about that theory. May the crystal be with you. Like us to scribble. Get on that notification button.